I'll never forget the night my world shattered. I walked into Father's office, looking for my phone charger, and found him hunched over his desk, sobbing into his hands. Papers were scattered everywhere, and an empty whiskey glass sat beside his trembling fingers. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red and hollow. "Vivian," he whispered, "I'm so sorry." My stomach dropped. He explained that our family business was drowning in debt, that we'd lose everything within weeks. Then came the part that stopped my heart. He'd made a deal with someone powerful, someone who could save us. But the price wasn't money. It was me. My marriage. My future. I couldn't breathe. "You sold me." The words barely came out. He reached for my hand, but I jerked away. "It's not like that," he stammered. "This man, he's wealthy beyond imagination. You'll be taken care of, you'll want for nothing." But I didn't want his money. I wanted my freedom. I wanted my father to fight for me, not trade me away like property. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried until dawn. 3 days later, a sleek black car arrived at our gate. I had no choice. Had to go. The man waiting at City Hall looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than our house. When he saw me, his expression didn't change. No smile, no warmth, nothing. "Vivian Turner." His voice was deep and cold. I nodded, unable to speak. "I'm Damien Cross." The name meant nothing to me then. We signed papers in a sterile room with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. No guests, no flowers, no photographs. Just two strangers binding themselves together with ink and silence. Afterward, he led me to a car that looked like it belonged to royalty. The leather seats were softer than my bed at home. We drove for 40 minutes without speaking. The city disappeared behind us, replaced by endless gates and private roads. When we finally stopped, gasped. The mansion before me was enormous, all white stone and towering windows. It looked beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Damien opened my door. "This is your home now," he said flatly. "My assistant will show you to your room. We'll discuss the rules tomorrow." Then he walked away, leaving me standing alone in front of a palace that felt more like a cage. Living with Damien was like living with a ghost. He left before sunrise, and returned after midnight. When we did cross paths, he barely acknowledged me. The staff treated me politely but kept their distance, as if I carried some invisible disease. I tried making conversation with the housekeeper, Mrs. Cho, but she always found excuses to leave quickly. The mansion had 23 rooms, and I'd counted every one during my lonely walks. Everything was pristine, expensive, untouched. Felt like a museum, not a home. One evening, I decided to wait for Damien in the dining room. When he finally appeared at 9 o'clock, he looked exhausted. "You don't have to wait for me," he said, sitting down across from me. "I want to," I replied. "We're married. Shouldn't we at least talk?" He poured himself wine, his jaw tight. "This isn't that kind of marriage, Vivian. I have my life, you have yours now. That's how this works." His words stung more than I expected. "Then why did you agree to this?" Yes. He looked at me for the first time since sitting down, and something flickered in those gray eyes. "Because I needed something from your father, and he needed my money. That's all." But his voice wavered slightly, and I wondered if he was lying to me or to himself. The nightmares started in my 3rd week there. I'd wake up gasping, convinced I heard footsteps outside my door. The mansion was too quiet at night. Every creak and whisper amplified in the darkness. One evening, I heard voices coming from downstairs. Loud, angry voices. I crept to the staircase and peered down. Damien stood in the foyer with 3 men in dark suits. They were arguing about someone who broke the terms and needed to be handled. My blood ran cold when one of them pulled out what looked like a weapon. Damien's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Not here. Take him to the warehouse. I'll deal with it tomorrow." The men nodded and left. I tried to slip back to my room, but the floorboard beneath me creaked. Damien's head snapped up. Eyes met. For several heartbeats, neither of us moved. Then he climbed the stairs slowly, deliberately. When he reached me, he spoke in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. "You didn't see anything tonight, Vivian. Do you understand?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He studied my face for a moment longer, then walked past me to his room. I didn't sleep at all that night. After that night, I started noticing things. The way certain rooms were always locked. How the security guards changed shifts every 4 hours. The phone calls Damien took in his study, always in hushed tones, always ending with someone saying, "Yes, sir," before the line went dead. I became obsessed with the locked door at the end of the west corridor. Damien disappeared into that room several times a week, staying for hours. I'd pressed my ear against it once and heard nothing but silence. Drove me crazy. What was he hiding? One afternoon, while Damien was away, I searched his bedroom. My hands shook as I rifled through his drawers, feeling like a thief in my own home. In his coat pocket, I found a small silver key. My heart hammered as I took it. The locked room was exactly where I remembered. The key slid in smoothly. Inside was an office unlike anything I'd seen. Computer screens covered one wall, displaying security feeds from cameras I didn't know existed. Files were stacked on a massive desk, marked with names and dates. And then I saw it. A photograph of my father, clipped to a folder labeled Project Turner. My hands trembled as I reached for it, looking for something. Damien's voice came from behind me, cold as winter ice. I spun around, the folder clutching to my chest. Damien stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "I can explain," I stammered, but he held up his hand. "No need." He walked past me and took the folder from my shaking hands. "You want to know what's in here? Your father's debts. His deals with some very dangerous people. His desperate attempts to save himself by sacrificing you." Each word hit me like a physical blow. "That's not all, though." He pulled out another document. "These are the threats made against you. 3 different organizations wanted to use you as leverage against your father. That's why I married you, Vivian. To keep you safe." I couldn't process what he was saying. "Safe? You terrify me. Those men, the weapons, the secrets, are necessary," he interrupted. "The world I live in doesn't allow for weakness. If they knew you mattered to me, if they saw any vulnerability, you'd be dead within a week." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. I stared at him, really looked at him for the first time. He wasn't cold. He was scared. "Who are you?" I whispered. He smiled sadly. "Turn on the news. You'll find out soon enough." That night I did. And everything changed. The television screen showed his face alongside words that made my blood freeze. Damien Cross, CEO of Cross Empire, under investigation for alleged connections to underground operations. The reporter's voice was grave as she listed his holdings: real estate, technology, private security firms. They called him ruthless, untouchable, dangerous. One of the most powerful men in the country. I sat in the dark living room, remote trembling in my hand. I'd married a stranger, but not just any stranger. I'd married the man everyone feared. When Damien came home that night, I was waiting. Why didn't you tell me? My voice shook with anger and fear. He loosened his tie, looking older than his 32 years. Would it have changed anything? You had no choice, and neither did I. What does that mean? He poured himself a drink, his back to me. Your father worked for me 5 years ago. He got greedy, started leaking company information to my competitors. When I found out, I could have destroyed him. Should have. But I saw your photo on his desk. Heard him talk about his brilliant daughter studying art in Paris. So I made him a different deal. My chest tightened. You've been planning this for 5 years. I've been protecting you for 5 years, he corrected. And now those people he betrayed want revenge. Against him and anyone he loves. That's why you're here. For 2 weeks, an uneasy peace settled between us. Damien explained more about his business, the legitimate parts and the gray areas he operated in. I learned he wasn't a criminal, but he dealt with people who were. He built his empire from nothing, using methods that weren't always legal but kept him alive in a world that ate the weak. I was starting to understand him when everything exploded. I was reading in the library when glass shattered downstairs. Shouting erupted, followed by gunshots that made my ears ring. I dropped my book and ran for the door, but it burst open before I reached it. A man in a black mask grabbed my arm. I screamed and fought, but he was too strong. More gunshots. The man holding me jerked and fell, blood blooming across his chest. I stumbled backward and saw Damien in the doorway, gun raised, eyes wild. "Vivian, run," he shouted. But I couldn't move. More masked men poured into the room. Damien fought like someone possessed, taking down 2 more before one of them caught him with a blow to the ribs. He went down hard. I screamed his name. Something in me snapped. I grabbed a heavy bookend from the shelf and swung it at the nearest attacker. It connected with a sickening crack. Damien used the distraction to finish the rest. When silence finally fell, we were both breathing hard, surrounded by unconscious bodies. Damien's security team arrived within minutes, cleaning up the mess with efficient precision. A medic checked us both over. I had bruises forming on my arm and a cut on my cheek. Damien had 2 cracked ribs and a split lip. We sat together in his study while the house was secured. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, he reached for my hand. I let him take it. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I never wanted you to see that side of this life. I tried to keep you away from it." "I know," I whispered. And I did. For all his coldness, for all his secrets, Damien had been trying to protect me from the very beginning. "Your father's mistakes brought dangerous people into your life," he continued. "But I made a choice when I married you. I chose to stand between you and them, no matter what it cost me." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Why? You don't even know me." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and his expression softened. "I've known you longer than you think. 5 years of watching your life from a distance, making sure you were safe, seeing the kind of person you became despite your father's failures. Oh, you deserved better than to be collateral damage in his war." His thumb brushed across my knuckles. "And somewhere along the way, keeping you safe stopped being just business." 3 months have passed since that night. The men who attacked us were connected to one of Father's old schemes. Damien dealt with them, though he never told me exactly how. I decided I didn't need to know. Father and I talk now, carefully, slowly. I've forgiven him not because he deserves it, but because holding on to that anger was poisoning me. He's paying his debts now. Working an honest job for the first time in decades. Damien helped him find it. The mansion feels different now. Warmer. We have dinner together most nights. Talking about everything and nothing. He's teaching me about his businesses. The legitimate ones. I've started painting again. Turning one of the spare rooms into a studio. Last week, Damien stood in my studio doorway, watching me work. What? I asked, catching his stare. He smiled, something he does more often now. Just thinking how wrong I was. About what? About thinking I could keep my distance. That this could stay just business. He crossed the room and pulled me close. You got under my skin, Vivian Turner. Made me feel things I thought I'd buried years ago. I wrapped my arms around his waist, careful of his still healing ribs. The world still fears Damien Cross. But I know the man behind that reputation, the one who chose to protect a stranger, who learned to love when he thought he'd forgotten how. We were arranged to marry. But somehow, in that cold transaction, we found something real. If this story made you emotional, subscribe for a new revenge story every day.